Shalom and welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the Working Class Chronicles. We have been doing the leadership series over on the Hebrew Woman show, and over here we've been talking about navigating toxic work environments. And I do think that this conversation has had a lot. Once you start exploring the space, you find out that there is a lot of content about toxic work environments and how to protect yourself. And I do think it's important work. I also think that when you're in the heat of the battle, there's a lot of things that you're just not prepared for because I don't think the average person shows up to work looking for a fight. I know I certainly didn't. The average person doesn't show up looking for a reason to seek litigation or to get fired or to all the myriad of things that you go through when you're navigating a toxic work environment, the quitting, the hirings, the firings. I have personally watched one young lady shift positions 4 times since the time that I made my transition. And I thought it was interesting because it made me wonder, is this just a internal thing, or is it a just a microcosm of what really is going on today in society? And I think it's the latter. I think that, there's a reason we're in a gig economy where everybody is moving around, shifting around. No one wants to commit to an employer anymore. They want and I think it's not just about freedom. It's being labeled as, oh, this is freedom. I don't think that's the case because there's something to be said for stability, particularly as a person ages. They tend to like the idea of having benefits, being somewhere stable. I do think that having a gig economy and people being able to do things like Uber and Amazon and all these different things are just a way of escaping toxic work environments because I think you figure, well, you know what, at least I'm alone. But that's not how you build a community. That's not how you build a thriving community. You know, our workforce is what makes our community strong. And you want to build a vibrant and healthy and expansive workforce. But nobody wants to do it inside of the toxic work environment. What happened to the idea of just, doing your 8 and going home? That doesn't sound appealing to people either. You want a little more. You want your work to have meaning. And that is, when I was talking about doing the leadership EQI reports of the Clifton Strengths, learning what your um, values are, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. So for me, one of my strengths is that my work, I look for significance. I rate high in significance. I want what I'm doing and saying to mean something. And so I look for that. I've tried to look for meaning in a lot of what I do. And what I realize is that when that doesn't show up in a way where I'm able to produce, because I'm a creative type, it will come out in other ways. We're talking about. I was listening to a meditation, and the instructor was talking about a second chakra blockage and how we're supposed to create more than we consume. So a lot of times when you're exhibiting things like stress, anxiety, and then you start to pick up habits, addictions, other like outlets, smoking, eating, drinking, whatever it is because you're consuming more than you're producing, right? So that's the overall point. And I was thinking on that, and I really think it's true. When you're in a toxic work environment, you don't have the ability to produce in a meaningful way or contribute in a meaningful way because you are in fight or flight mode. Your body is in that trauma response where you feel like you're under constant attack. And I think that It's not only is that not beneficial to your employer, it's not beneficial to the whole place because when even though people aren't saying anything, people witness the othering. And they don't want to become the other because they see it. And listen, when you're othered in the office, the isolation, the information silos that come with it, the whole idea is to make you uncomfortable, to exclude you, to make you feel like you're not part of. And for me, always having been kind of the personality type that is kind of an independent operator, the othering doesn't bother me the way it will bother some people because I see it as opportunities for peace. Being a person who is of faith, Most High tells us to come out from amongst them. So when I see people engaging in toxic behavior, it doesn't bother me that they are excluding me. I look at that as thanks, you know. But I do think that we all want a sense of belonging. And thinking about that had me thinking about Brene Brown's TED Talk about belonging. And when she referenced Maya Angelou's interview, where she talked about belonging to herself, it made me think of, too, not only that we belong to the Most High, right? And I think when you are a child of the true and living God, you know you don't need to belong in spaces and places where people are rejecting you because you're never alone. The Bible says that the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So I think looking at othering as you can look at it for what it is because it is absolutely is toxic behavior. And that will be the next installment of the workplace series. We want to talk about the othering and things that you can do to protect yourself when you find yourself being the office outlier, when you find yourself being other. And I want to talk about how to stand on sovereign ground because the whole thing is once you focus on what you can control, when you focus on your inner citadel, you come to understand that while you can't control the way other people behave, you can control how you respond. And one of the things about being targeted is there are a lot of things that are done in order to trigger you. And when you are in a hyper state of vigilance, you tend to respond to everything and then sometimes even just overkill, right? And so I know I can say that definitely was my experience because I just really didn't know what to do. But I did know this because I witnessed the othering of someone else. I witnessed um, a systematic and persisted attack against them, and the purpose was their removal. And it ultimately happened, right? And it is something about watching someone being mobbed, and people have to choose their own responses. You can't tell people what they should do in those situations. And in this person's situation, they thought that ignoring it would cause it to go away, but that didn't work. And then by the time they got to the point where they were asking for intervention, it was too late. And so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about how you cannot appease and ignore your way out of being targeted. See, there are different types of toxic work environments, and I think really the term is overused. People think your coworkers not liking you, you're not getting along with your coworkers is targeting. No, people don't have to like you. I mean, this is not something that is part of the job requirement, right? Nobody has to be your friend at work. I would even advise against it at this point after my experience. But I would say this: being professional, being courteous, being respectful, and treating people the way you want to be treated is required. It's just it's basic human decency. You know, a coworker of mine likes to say, "You don't, we don't owe anybody respect, but we owe them civility," and I agree with that because you can't make people respect you. But in an office, it is important. It is incumbent upon management to make sure civility is something that exists. You know, nobody has to like you. And nobody, these aren't people you're trying to hang out with after work or you're inviting over for your holiday celebration. That's not, so it doesn't matter if they like you. But what does matter is can we get the work done? Can we move as a cohesive unit? That's what matters. When what I find is the majority of the issues that are had in toxic work environments almost never revolve around the actual work. And so what happens is the person who's being targeted, when they start filing complaints, when they start protesting, because if you're like me, you're not the type of person that is going to just sit there and allow people to do things to you. You're going to cry aloud and spare not, right? That's what the Bible says to do. You know, lift up thy voice like a trumpet. So you're gonna do that. But not everybody is like that. Clearly, a lot of people just they are the type to sit there and take it, and that's their prerogative. But I will say this: we know historically, appeasement doesn't work. Appeasement doesn't work in an office or anywhere else where the ultimate goal is your removal or to destroy you. So it doesn't matter how nice you are. It doesn't matter how much you can endure and ignore. You being silent on your systematic removal is not going to make it stop. It's not going to slow it. So this is where we get into documenting. And I do have a log for you all that I'll share when I show you when we go into the slide. But I wanted to just kind of come on here and just talk about it a little bit because as I, one of those people I like to think and think out loud. I was just thinking about the belonging aspect of it, and it's easy for somebody like me to talk about being sovereign, but I do know that a lot of people look for community at work. And I want to say that if you can shift that and start taking that need for belonging and not only internalize it, but make it external. Don't forget you have a community outside of work. And if you don't, then you need to seek opportunities to build that community. Take the time to join a club, learn a new hobby, get out, join your like I said, and I've said this repeatedly, just about every school and university now, even the community college, offers leadership classes. It's a great way to meet people. Go join your local chamber of commerce. Places like Focus St. Louis, leadership um, groups and academies, they're great ways to network and meet people. Join whatever political party you're affiliated with. Join their political party group. Start doing. My whole point is whether it is political, whether it is a knitting group or a quilting group, find something else. It's important because you need to be able to create more than you consume. Because if all you're consuming is toxicity in the workplace, because you're consuming that, you're taking that in, and it's going to show up. And in my case, it's manifested in stress and weight gain. And so I realized that I had to make an internal shift. And I think it does come naturally at some point when you learn that you're, especially if you're documenting well, you'll find yourself on firm ground because a lot of the vague things that are said about you, one of the things that you have to deal with when you're dealing with these type of situations are the narratives. There will one because you're documenting. She's difficult, um, litigious, mm, complainer. They will try to label you all those things. Chronic complainer. That is just a way of discouraging you from doing what you need to do. Those descriptors, that is just noise because when you get outside of the situation, anybody, especially if you end up having to take your reporting outside of your organization, anybody's gonna look. You say, okay, she's a chronic complainer, difficult employee, problem employee. So what is the problem? When you can't tie it to performance. Again, I go back to the majority of the issues, and I can say for me, my situations in any work situation that I've had is that's why I did the Bob Skaggs piece, right? I don't mind the job. The work's no big deal. It's the way they treat you, the way they make you feel. None of the issues that I dealt with had anything to do with the job or the performance. It was personal. It's all personal. So when people just cannot, because they have a personal issue with you, allow you to be, it is in your best interest to document. When they have made it a mission because whether they feel like you don't belong or you have something that they believe is theirs, I'm sure you've heard the they stole my job thing before. Why did they get promoted? They just got here, or all those different things that go on, or why did they pick her over me or him over me? He's not as qualified as I am. All of that, all of it. That's personal. Because here's the thing, whether your coworkers believe you are qualified for your position or not, when you apply, you have to prove that you could do the work. You have to fill out an application like everybody else. And in some organizations, particularly in the public sector, if your application is rejected and you're qualified, you get to file an appeal because public, where you guys saw the video I did about, I had the AI talking about when you work in the public sector that these jobs, public sector jobs belong to the people. So they don't just get to keep people out because they don't like them. So I'll say this to anybody applying for federal, government, and local, any type of government job. If your application is rejected and you qualify, there is a process for appealing that. The jobs belong to the people. Now, of course, in that appeal process, you're going to have to bring the paperwork. You can't just appeal it. You're going to have to bring the proof. You're going to have to put up or shut up. And a lot of times it's simpler than you think. And today, I'm showing you guys, I'm going to do those segments as well, how to use AI to help you present your case, make your arguments. And in some cases, and we can have a whole debate back and forth about the use of AI, but it's here and it's going to be a required tool. So you better just go ahead and start learning how to use it and use it to your benefit. And I will say this, don't become overly lazy where you're letting AI write everything for you. Not only will it lead to brain rot, but you won't grow. I will say this, when you're writing, for example, and you decide that you're going to run what you've written through AI, if you have AI edit for you, I have a built-in prompt for mine because like Gemini will have, you can build in prompts where these are instructions. These are instructions that you want us to follow at all times. For me, it is whenever I put a narrative in here, you make the corrections. You'll tell me what you corrected and why. So sometimes AI will edit your documents and change your words and totally change the meaning of what you're sending. You literally have to go line upon line because AI will mess you around. But when it comes to grammatical errors and just learning in general, don't allow AI to just correct and fix for you. Get an understanding of what it corrected and why. There, I tell people all the time, you have now we've gone beyond, how to say you got the World Wide Web, you have information at your fingertips. You have a university at your fingertips. You literally can create your own classes. And not only that, a lot of universities like MIT and I believe even Harvard, yeah, they have some too. They have free courses. You can have the AI build a course out for you. It will not only assign the textbook, it will give you assignments, and a lot of times it'll link you right to the university that the course is offered through for free. Because some people just like learning. I'm one of those people. I do that. It's just about learning new things. And maybe going to school right now isn't in your budget. But what I'm telling you is there is nothing that you can't learn now. If you are weak in an area, you can literally have AI assist you and train. There's a caveat to that. You need to require that it give you links and sources to anything that it gives you. For example, I wanted to go through some material and the AI, because AI will always make it look like it's speaking as an expert. It knows this is factually accurate. Well, I knew the information that it gave me. As a matter of fact, I was creating a stream, and we were for the Hebrew Woman show, and I was trying to pair 48 Laws of Power with the Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I wanted to know what power dynamics were violated by certain irrefutable laws. My argument was, with my experience, that the law of the lid, I had a violation of law number one with my lid. Now that may not be the case for other people because you may have other caps on your leadership, but I didn't think that I ever violated that first law of power. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with somebody and they asked me specifically, did I do that? And I emphatically argued no. But that's why we do 2 Corinthians 13 and 5 and examine ourselves. So I discovered I was in error. You have people who will target you because you can be intimidating. They may see you as stronger than them and they need to remove you. You could be an obstacle in their mind. I've always been the type of person, like even when I was doing content with a group, I always like to surround myself, I say, with people who were smarter than me. I didn't realize that I was using that as a crutch because I do believe that when you have excellent people around you, it makes you more excellent. When if leading an organization, as we build out the IGB Foundation, I'm still going to look for the smartest people in the room. I'm still going to always try to hire or be around people who are smarter than me because I want them. Iron sharpens iron. But everybody doesn't see it that way. Some people will see it as, I have to be the smartest person in the room. They need to go. I think that's a mistake, a leadership mistake. I think you should always have people who are smarter than you in the room because they'll help you catch your mistakes. And if you're a person who cannot be corrected, you're going to fail. The Bible says that the Lord corrects those who he loves. And if you don't have a truth teller around you, somebody who can tell you when you're tripping, I even program some prompts in my AI. I want to be corrected if I'm making statements that are incorrect. AI makes statements that are incorrect. I argue with AI all the time. So this is why I'm telling you, do not trust that AI is correct all the time because it'll literally tell me, my bad. I mean, because it does try to match you, right? It'll match your tone. It'll start mimicking you at times. it's kind of it can be a little creepy. You have to, and you can make it stop doing that when it starts imitating you. You can make it stop. You just tell it what type of personality or features you want it to have. Anyway, I digress. My overall point here, as I sit here rambling, is just that let me just say this: if you are when you all send me your questions about hostile work environments, or if you have something that you want to see illustrated, like if you want to see your story played out virtually, I will create it. We can put it on the Summer Jam screen, no problem. But I will tell you this: anybody just offering you a one size fits all solution for your problem without knowing the specific dynamics is not helping you. Hostile work environments are not one size fits all because sometimes the hostility is literally just between you and a coworker. That's a different dynamic versus you have a internal structure that's built on mobbing, harassment, discrimination, sexual harassment, racism, whatever is going on, whatever isms are going on, okay? That is completely different than personality conflict. And so that's why too with your report when you're reporting and recording, those little personality conflicts, that is not that is not a hostile work environment. I'm not saying you're not experiencing toxicity and you may not have hostility between you and other coworkers. I'm just telling you she doesn't like me isn't something that is a legitimate workplace complaint. She doesn't have to like you. But when we're talking about filing legitimate complaints, these need to fit a certain criteria. Okay. So, but I will talk about how to navigate around some of these difficulties. For example, if your supervisor hates you, that is something that you cannot get around. You can't because this is the person who is your supervisor. They're responsible for your performance reviews. And if you are in a place where you're being targeted and there's no remedy, then yeah, well, I think the conversations for exit strategies are warranted and reasonable. But if you're being targeted in your performance reviews and you can legitimately show why the performance review is wrong, this is where your documentation comes in. When you can show that there's personal animus, this is where your documentation comes in. And but here's the thing about going to HR, and there's a million videos on here about how HR isn't your friend. Once you cross that threshold, you better make sure you are reporting things that can lead to some type of resolution. For me, I can honestly say if it was not something that a suit could be filed over, I wouldn't even take it to personnel. That's just me personally, because once you do, you put a target on your back. They do want to label you as problematic. And most employees, and I can say definitely myself, didn't want to be bothered with dealing with any of this process, any other process at all. However, you get wherever you go. What we're going to talk about tomorrow or sometime this week, depends on how tomorrow goes, I have to tell you, Mondays. Um, if you are sovereign, if you are staying, if you are standing, what does that look like for you? Because we have exit strategies, all conversations all the time. But what does it look like for you to stay? And if you, whether the stay is long term, short term because you're close to retirement, or you just need a couple years to finish school or whatever you're doing, how can you stay and stay in peace? And is it realistic? So, that's something that you'll have to assess. There are different systems, and different rules. Like if you're unionized, what does that look like for you? Are you familiar with the rules? Like What protections are there for you? And that's why talking to your union rep is important, or whatever other measures that you have. These are just things that I was sitting here thinking about. I just wanted to come on and share my thoughts with you all on. I am going to continue working on my presentation for you all, but I just want to get your thoughts in the comment section. What would you like to see more of? Or, as always, let me put the banner on the screen. You guys can email me at sister7@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm not going to gaslight you and give you a bunch of AI generated bullshit about and platitudes. You need things that can help you right now with your current situation. But I will tell you this, as I told someone else that was talking to me about their situation. You can't give me surface level stories. Like, you can't just give me, oh, my boss is bothering me. Oh, my coworker hates me. There is always a why. And that's where I was going with the complaint. They will label you a chronic complainer, but anybody with an ounce of sense is going to say, okay, well, what is she complaining about? Because are these legitimate complaints? Now, you're saying she's a chronic complainer. What is she mad about? What is he mad about? What is he saying is happening here? That's the horse of a different color. Because the other stuff is just noise. Get your receipts in order. And if you don't know how to get them in order, don't worry. There's an app for that. And I have the templates and things to help you. And we're going to talk about all of this. Thanks for watching. Shalom.